So many women in my audience ask themselves, why does money feel so difficult, even when I know I'm good at what I'm doing? Or why do I feel blocked when it comes to charging, receiving, or growing my business? If you've ever asked yourself these questions, today's episode is for you. Because my guest is someone who helps women change their relationship with money in a very real and practical way. Hi, I'm Adriana Radu, and today I have the pleasure to welcome someone who has deeply influenced the way I and so many women around the world think about money, business, and worth. Denise Duffield-Thomas is a money mentor for the new wave of online entrepreneurs who want to make money and change the world. Her business is in the seven-figure range, and her best-selling book, Get Rich Lucky Bitch, has sold over 20,000 copies worldwide, and I'm the happy owner of one of them. I have to say I was one of the many fans, and also one of the women who benefited from her incredible program, Money Bootcamp, which teaches us how to upgrade our lives, not just financially, but energetically, from economy to first class. Denise is also a mother of three, and she describes herself as a lazy introvert, which I know many women in my audience will resonate with this, and maybe I'll pick you up on this one later because it sounded very interesting. So Denise, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm truly grateful for this conversation.
Oh, well, I am as well, Adriana. And I want to say too how magical this is to be able to connect with you. We're on opposite sides of the planet,
That is
right?
true.
It's a completely different day here in Australia because of the time zone.
So
And
it's night,
yes,
it's 1 a.m. in the night by the time we do this.
yep. And it's the next day for me. So I think it's a real privilege. And I think sometimes we forget that even though we live in a very turbulent time, we also live in such an exciting time where we have these tools available to us that our mothers and our grandmothers didn't have, that allow us to express ourselves creatively, to choose ourselves and not wait for somebody else to choose us, to make our own money, and to be able to connect and have this beautiful global community of like-minded women who are, and not just women, but people who are rooting for each other and helping each other, because we all want to make the world a better place. So I'm so grateful that we could connect, and thank you for having me on.
I don't know if you can feel it, but I'm also thrilled and a little bit emotional, I think. I just couldn't believe it. It's real, to be honest. But I'm so happy you're here. So I'm dying to ask you about the book, Get Rich Lucky Bitch, because my mentor recommended to me and also recommended the program. So at that time, I wouldn't even dream of talking to you. So it's great. So Get Rich Lucky Bitch. My question is, are you lucky? The first question.
Well, so my first book that I wrote was called Lucky Bitch. And
Oh,
this
yeah.
was, and the reason behind this is because I was in my 20s, I was living in London, and I was really struggling with what am I going to do with my life, right? You have that kind of late 20s existential crisis, and you think, oh my God, I'm going to be 30 soon. What am I doing with my life? I'm running out of time, all those things. But I was really struggling because I'd always been a student of personal development. I loved reading personal development books, but I couldn't seem to translate that motivation that I felt inside into anything tangible. And I wasn't able to find a way to make money from all those skills I knew I had inside. And so I remember wanting to do this experiment around the law of attraction. And I read the book, The Secret, I heard about all that kind of stuff. And I really thought, oh my God, I'm not enlightened enough to do this. I don't meditate. I'm a mess. I've got, I had undiagnosed ADHD. I didn't know what it was then, but I was like, I'm so disorganized. I'm not like those people who can just sit and
Mm.
meditate all day.
I am one of those. I have to say, I
Yeah.
love it.
And I felt like, a lot of my friends seemed very happy in their jobs. And I was just like, oh, what's happening? So I decided to do this experiment where I applied all of the personal development stuff that I'd heard about over the years into really practical ways. And I was like, well, I can't write down my goals every day, but maybe I can create, you know, make my life into a bit of a vision board and have all of these reminders. And I'm just going to kind of be a little bit delusional, and really big myself up and really go crazy on affirmations. And what started happening was the universe did start conspiring in my favor. And it was just a really weird, like, year of things. So the first thing that happened was I was in the UK on a student visa, but I couldn't afford my tuition. And I just kept on like being so delusional about it, going, everything's going to be okay. It's going to be totally fine. It's all going to work out. The universe is conspiring in my favor. And I got a bank error in my favor. I got a bank error of £5,000 in my bank account. And it was
Wow.
just, yeah, it was like a couple of days before the tuition was due. And I did have to pay it back, but they converted it into a loan for me, whereas previously I wasn't able to get a loan to pay for,
Okay.
especially an international student,
Mm.
visa. And because it was the bank's fault, right? And then I really wanted to do a life coaching course and I didn't have the money for it. And a friend of mine sent me a message and said, did you see that you won a life coaching course? I was on a webinar last night with this life coaching lady that I'd signed up for that I didn't remember. And she'd mentioned on the call that she was giving away a couple of her courses and I was one of the winners. And I was like,
Wow.
I didn't even think about that. I wanted to self-publish my first book and I went to an event and the lucky door prize was a self-publishing course. And I remember saying to the lady, I was like, oh, I love winning. Whereas before I would have said, I never win anything.
Mm.
And that's not for me. And I remember tapping under the table going, it's safe for me to win. It's okay for me. And I said to her, I think I'm going to win this. And then they called out my name and she just looked at me and was like, oh, what is happening? And a lot of these little things were happening. And I was also trying to feel more abundant in everyday life. And my mum loved going to bingo. Do you have bingo there? When you
No, we don't play bingo
Oh,
anymore.
okay. But anyway, I've never been a gambler, but I went to bingo and I won $500. I was just like, what is happening here? But the big one that happened, which is what I wrote the book about, is that I decided to set this really big goal that I wanted to go traveling. And I started telling all my friends, Mark and I, who's my fiance at the time, I said, we're going to take 6 months off and we're going to go and travel around the world. And people would say, how are you going to pay for that? And I say, I don't know, something's going to happen, And I was thinking, maybe, there's this new thing called blogging. Maybe someone will pay me to blog or something like that. And I wrote this post-it on my wall and it said, 6 months, all expenses paid, travel, £3,000 a month. And I just had it on there. And a friend of mine, she sent me a text and she said, I found you a perfect job. And it was a competition for a couple to go around the world testing out honeymoons. And it was £3,000 a month and it was 6 months, all expenses paid. But that's where the lucky bitch came from, because my friends were saying, you're such a lucky bitch. But I go in the book about how I had to do so much work to put myself into it. And it's not just, you have to take action as well, because it wasn't just then they picked me out of a hat. I had to do a lot of mindset work to kind of get that. So, and people will say, you're so lucky. And I said, no, it is a combination, right? I do think I am lucky, but also there's a lot more to it sometimes.
It was one of my questions, and I wanted to ask it later, but I'll ask it now. So, is manifestation something passive? Which is, sit and wait. I don't think that, but it's like many people think, and they go to different courses and they do affirmations and they do whatever you said there.
Yeah.
Which they do work, but in certain conditions. Yeah. What is manifestation at the end of the day?
I think it is, the way I always think about it is that I'm a Virgo. I'm very, very practical. So the word manifest means to make something appear. And I always think it's to make something real. It's to make something manifest in the world, is to make it real. And so I always come at it from that lens. It's not to make it appear as if by magic, although there's something there when you put yourself forward for things, and sometimes there's that unexplained bit of magic for sure, right? Absolutely. But when I put myself and meet the universe halfway, there's a lot of action, and sometimes people miss the crucial bit, which is you have to apply for it. You have to put your name in you have to be in the room. There was one person who sent me the link for that job ad, and it's because I told her I wanted to go traveling. And so she thought about me when she saw it. You go, how can I reverse engineer some of those lucky coincidences? And I also love the book, The Luck Factor by Richard Wiseman, because he does talk about the science of luck. And he does talk about the attributes of people who consider themselves lucky and who also lucky things happen to. And it's those things that's like engineering those coincidences of putting yourself forward for things, but it's also the belief part of it, is believing you're a lucky person. And that in itself has a cascade of effects of, if you believe you're lucky, you're more likely to apply for something. And even when I saw that job, I was like, I'm going to win it. But I still had to do all the work for it. And Mark came home from work and I said, I found how we're going to go traveling. It was blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh crap. And we still had to make a video. We almost didn't get it in by the deadline. I believed it so much that I jumped through all of those hoops that were really hard for me as an ADHD person too. Deadlines, paperwork, all of the challenges that we had to do to win the competition. If you don't have that strong belief, you kind of put yourself out of the game before you've even started. And so much of that is mindset, then creating the action.
So what you're saying is manifestation, recipe for manifestation is wishing a lot, it's action and belief. And
with the wishing part, I think it's knowing what you want. It's the clarity.
Wishing in a sense of not like just dreaming. It's like, I know this is what I want. Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. But
no, but it's true, because we think of I think sometimes that wishing thing it is a powerful word, right? But it is also, it's like making a request. Sometimes it's like, you've got to be specific for the universe to know what you want, but also for people to help you, for the universe to conspire, is that the specificity of that, then it does bring people in, and it does create that little part of your brain that looks for the things that are going to help you. If it's very vague, I always think of it as like, if you call up the local pizza place and you say, send me a pizza, send me something you think I would like. It doesn't work like that. But if you say, send me this pizza, and you believe that it's going to come, it's a completely different experience. And so many of us are going, universe, send me more money, send me more clients, but we're not being really specific about what that is. And so it just can't all lock into place in whatever mysterious way the law of attraction works. And depending on your belief level, where you think it's purely practical versus purely magical, wherever you land on that spectrum, you still have to get those mechanisms into place somehow, and getting specific about it. I actually think there's a step before that, though. And the way that I teach manifesting is sometimes you have to declutter before you know what you want. And the decluttering is sometimes emotional, which is a lot of the work that I do with people with money, is that it's really hard to ask for what you want when you have all of these unknown money blocks that are going to sabotage you. And one of them could be your grandmother drummed it into you that it's really impolite to talk about money. It's disgusting to talk about money, right? And so with that fundamental belief, without looking at it and decluttering it and nutting it out a little bit, it's really hard to know what you want. If you were someone who always had to suppress their desires, and you can't even choose what to have on a menu because you don't even know your own desires, it's really tricky to then create these big manifestations, because you don't even give yourself permission to have the milk that you want at the cafe that's only going to cost you a couple of euros. But yet you think the universe is going to send you this big windfall, but you can't even receive the little things. So I think there's a lot of decluttering that needs to happen all simultaneously. It's not like it has to be this linear, you have to spend 10 years decluttering and getting perfect, because that is a block. I have to be perfect.
It's never happening. Even I remember there's two things here. I remember when I was in the boot camp and I did this first evaluation. God, I was crying my eyes. I think I cried for 3 hours because everything in my life was economy class except studying self-development. I was investing a lot of money, nothing was happening. And the worst thing is that you said there, you have to pick three things that you're going to upgrade. And I picked to buy a watch, a certain brand, which I wanted, and it was not even very expensive, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the money. Don't get me wrong. I had the money, but I just couldn't buy it. I had to ask one of my friends, well, can I buy it? Well, how much is it? And I said, she said, I mean, it was something ridiculous, like 40 euros or something. And I had plenty of money in the bank account.
Mm-hmm.
Just couldn't allow myself to spend money for me. It was
Yes.
so hard. And I still have some thresholds, my internal thermostat. I'm slowly growing it. I mean, I can spend for the business, but when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to me, like to go, we went to Egypt in February with my husband, and he said, no matter, it doesn't matter how much, but let's get it. And they upgraded us to beautiful. I mean, the room was on my vision board. I just looked there and it was really with a swimming pool and everything. And for 2 days I felt sick. That
Mm-hmm.
it was, I just couldn't. And then at some point I said, look, I got it as a present. I didn't spend any money on it. So this is, so there are strange things happening. But this interview, it really happened because I made a wish. I was thinking to interview my mentor in the US, Haraj Wasugi, and then it came your invitation. I said, okay, I will apply, but I don't think she's going. I mean, I'm too small for the podcast. But then it happened, and I said, oh my God, like, so yeah, it's happening,
If
guys.
you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, I mean, just ask
Yeah.
for it. If you want to win the lottery, buy a ticket. Even God said this. So, going back to the book, I like there you said celebrity and rich people have money blocks, just like everyone else.
Oh, yeah.
Do you still experience money blocks? I mean,
Me personally,
yeah.
absolutely. And you know what's so funny? It's like you with the Egypt example. It's actually not about the money. It's really not. And we think it is. And that's why we think, well, when I have the money, I will be perfect or my life will be perfect. And I think part of this money block experience and curiosity that we're going to do for our whole life is realizing that it's not about the money and it's not about perfection, because you can be a horrible person and be wealthy. We've seen this all the time, right? We've seen this all over the planet. And so morality is not the thing that's going to make us money. Perfection is not the thing that's going to make us money. And the money itself, it will not change us in any fundamental way, because there will always be blocks that are kind of the same, no matter how much money we have, no matter what era of life we would have been born into, what country, etc. And I'll give you some examples, really practical examples. So one of my recurring money blocks is that I want people to like me. I want people to think that I'm nice and down to earth, right? So as my journey had progressed in my business, I'd always get to a point and I'd go, oh, well, I can't make any more money now because people will think that they'll think that I'm not down to earth anymore. I'll be unrelatable. And so then I'd reach that point and it would feel very real. I'd go, I can't make any more money. And then I'd work through it and I'd go, okay, no, but this next one, this is really real now. I can't make any more money. And this has followed me and it will continue. And there's someone I met a couple of years ago and she did not like me on site. Did not like me. And I still think, how can I get her to like me? Well, and the more I tried, the more it was worse, right? Because she'd be like you're trying too hard now. And I'm like, no amount of money will make that ever truly go away for me, because that's something I will always have to work on. And I can't let it stop me from making more money, right? And so I've had to work on that one a lot. But there's also behaviors that we will continue to have no matter how much money we have. So if you're someone who will always sacrifice themselves for other people. That would happen if you were a beggar who was born, 200 years ago in the poorest country on earth, and that will happen to you no matter how much money you have, because that's just part of your nature. And so I've had to learn to not enable my family, especially when I started making money, I was like, I'm going to help my siblings. And that is my nature. I would do that at any level of money. And some of that I've had to learn and say what is healthy and what's unhealthy for me, but it's still part of my nature. And so your money blocks will never truly ever really go away. You'll always have some of them that will come up either at difficult points in your life or at different income levels. Some you'll understand and say, okay, I don't need to do that. That's a lesson I can learn in this lifetime. Other times you'll need to find ways to play with it, dance with it. Sometimes it will come up and you'll have to, you'll have to deal with that. We think that there's a version of ourselves that is perfect.
Do we have to be perfect? I mean, I want to be happy. I realize that I want to be happy. That's the purpose in life. And then how we do it, that depends, everybody. But do we have to be perfect? I mean, no.
I feel like women have a lot more perfectionism stuff around this than men do, because I know for myself, I had a very particular idea of maybe what I should look like or how I should dress as a wealthy woman, because I'd never really seen examples of really wealthy women except in movies and TV, which is obviously an idealized perfect version. Whereas I think men could see examples of themselves. If you look at the rich list 100 men, they're all different. Some of them are handsome, some of them are not, some of them are tall, short, bigger, smaller, some of them dress really fancy, some of them dress like slobs. And there's a much more variety of what real
Don't you think it's accepted to be a slob as a man as opposed to a woman? Because the partner from the agency I'm working with keeps telling me, Adriana, you have to look better, you have to dress better because you're selling money. I'm creating funnels for therapists and coaches, so you have to, and he keeps saying, and I'm like, this is who I am. And I am 59. I'm not ashamed to say it. And I attract older people. And that's it. And he said, no, you have to attract younger audience. I'm sorry, but this is me. I'm not ashamed of who I am. But I do feel sometimes that men somehow can get along with things that women are. Am I hallucinating here, or
no? It is true. And also I think we've all got our own internalized view of what that looks like. And especially if you're a minority woman, you've never seen anyone with your skin color or your accent or from your country or who looks like you. I think women are harder on ourselves for our physicality. We think, no, I have to lose weight before I take photos or before I start my podcast, or I'm too young or I'm too old. We have a lot of judgments, I think, about our physical appearance and our ability to make money. And there's no doubt that sometimes you can upgrade and, you can feel more confident, for sure. But I think there is something in what you were saying, though, about that confidence to be like, this is who I am, and I don't have to be any way to make money. I have to find the people who like me for who I am. And that's really tricky. I know that so many of us will never get there 100%. And some of that is because we don't have the role models to show us that it's okay to do that. And we have to be the role models. And that can be scary. It can feel vulnerable to do that. We feel like all our stuff comes up of like, it's not good to brag or it's not good to show money. I know I had this view of myself of like the country club lady. And it's ironic that I'm wearing white because I never normally wear white, but I've just got interview outfits. I've got my yoga pants on underneath, and I change my jackets. Exactly.
I'm just same here. Talking about money, am I going to say that Denise has a 7-figure business? Maybe, I like to tell women that it's possible, guys. Come on. I mean, okay, we're in a democracy for 35 years. But before that, it was a communist country. So that was not even possible to think that you have a business. I was born in that period, and having a business was not even possible. I mean, until 12 years ago, having a business was, I mean, my dream was to be employed, and luckily I was very well. I was an executive in multinational companies, but it's like having a business, oh my god, no. So I wanted to ask you, okay, you mentioned in the book as well, and you tell us a story about you being a student. You're living from paycheck to paycheck. So, and you said you were money repellent. What was the turning point which, really made a change in your business?
Well, I've had many turning points for sure, because it's never a perfect journey. But so Mark and I went on that all expenses paid trip around the world, and it was amazing. It really stretched, we were staying in incredible 5-star resorts and places that, really wealthy people would go. And it really stretched my mind. And one thing stood out. I heard this man, he just picked up a phone in the reception, and he said, okay, I'm just going to order some food. My kids will have blah, blah. Didn't look at a menu, just said, my kids will have blah, 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 and put it down. And it was really confronting a lot of those things on the trip, right? Because I was kind of like, I didn't have nice clothes in a lot of these places. And so I felt like a massive fraud. And then when the trip was over and we decided to move back to Australia, I was on my mum's couch for a while, just going, now what? And I remember saying to my siblings, who are much younger than me, and I was saying to them, you've got to study harder and get good grades. And they were like, you're sleeping on our couch. They were like, you're 30 and you're sleeping on our couch. Like, why are you telling us what to do? And I think that was a point where I hadn't really thought about money mindset in a practical money way. I know that sounds really weird, but I was like, oh my God, the universe has given me all of these gifts, but not money. And I was like, I'm really lucky, but none of that was money. It was all free stuff. And it was like $500,000 worth of free stuff, right? And I went, universe, I'm a big girl now. I'm ready to graduate. You can send me money now. I'm ready for it, right? Yeah. That was a turning point. That doesn't mean that all the money started pouring in, right? But I was like, and there was a lot of moments like that. I remember another moment where I was talking to someone about savings. Oh yeah, I've got this amount of savings. How much savings have you got? And I was like, savings? I was like, what do you mean? Because I was just so used to living week by week, paycheck by paycheck, and being scrappy. I was like, I'll just get another job. I'll just work more. And, I'd had 5 jobs at any one time. And I was just used to living like that, because I was like, you just go out and get more money if you need more money. Why would you need a buffer? And so what I realized was, I think it felt unsafe to have a buffer, which was a really weird experience. But we talk about this in Money Bootcamp, and it was like, and I think I was so used to living in that feast or famine that it felt frivolous to have more. It felt like, I don't know, like you'd be a princess. Like, who are you? The princess, like Princess and the Pea. You're allowed to have comfort. You're allowed to have your nervous system like be okay. Like, what is that like? And so I had to acclimatize myself to it. So I decided I would put away $5 a week into a savings account. Because what I used to do is, if I had $5 in my bank account, but I knew I was getting paid the next day, I would spend that $5. I would spend it.
Well,
until I was at